Okay, so I'm gonna make cinnamon rolls today, and the cinnamon rolls I'm gonna make are dairy-free. I can't have dairy, but I can do gluten, so they will have normal flour, but they will taste amazing, and no one will ever know that you used substitutes and not milk. I've already washed my hands, and the first thing that we do is we put in 4 cups of flour. Okay, the next thing is 2 cups of potato flakes. These are like food storage potatoes, dried potatoes, but not the pearls. The pearls won't work. You need the flakes. Okay, after that, it's 1 3/4 cup white sugar. So I'm going to use a 1/4 cup, and here's my white sugar. Use it 3 times. And then there's the 1 cup. Okay, after that we do 2 tablespoons of salt, which is kind of a lot. So I'm just gonna do 1 tablespoon because I don't like it really, really salty. Okay, and then 3 tablespoons of yeast. If you store your yeast in the fridge, it lasts a long time. You can also, if you can find it, buy an extra and keep it in the freezer, and then just pop it in the fridge when you're ready to use it, because it lasts a long time in the freezer. Okay, so 3 tablespoons of yeast, and now we're gonna mix these dry ingredients together. This is what my mixer looks like. It's hot. It really is my favorite thing. Okay, so now that's all mixed. And now I've got to do the next. So the next step is where we're going to substitute things. It calls for a cup of butter, but I'm going to use a cup of butter flavored Crisco that's softened to room temperature. And then it also calls for 4 cups of scalded milk, but we don't need to scald the milk because we're using almond milk. So this is the kind that I use. It works really great as a substitute for dairy milk in any recipe. And I'm just going to warm the 4 cups up on the stove. While the almond milk is warming up, I'm also going to put 4 eggs in this bowl and whisk them together. It's important for the almond milk to be warm because that warm milk is what's going to help activate the yeast to help your bread rise. Here's the butter flavored Crisco. I'm gonna put it in the microwave for probably 20 seconds just to get it warm. Okay, so I warmed up my Crisco a little bit. It's not melty, but it's soft, so I'm gonna put that in the bowl. And then the almond milk on the stove, I have it warming up. It's still kind of steamy right here, but it's warm enough, and my hands are washed, that I can stick my finger in it and not get burned. If you burn your finger, it's way too hot and it will kill your yeast. So I'm gonna pour that in. I also added the eggs into here just so they wouldn't be cold either, because we want to make sure that yeast activates. We're going to put the lid on it, and we're going to turn that on and let that all mix together. For about a minute. So I've got that mixed in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some vanilla. This is my friend that makes homemade vanilla. It's the best ever. So we're gonna put in a tablespoon of vanilla because we're making cinnamon rolls. We want these to taste really nice and sweet. So we'll put in a tablespoon of vanilla. And then the next thing we will do is we will add 4 cups of flour, and then we'll see if we need to add any more. when I say if we need to add any more, we need to make sure that the dough is pulling away from the sides of the mixing bowl on its own. Otherwise, it'll be too doughy. And we want to make sure that our rolls rise and they have enough flour. So now we're going to mix for 3 minutes. Okay, so it's been 3 minutes. I want to show you what the dough looks like right now. So it did pull away from the sides, but it is still a little bit sticky because if I touch it, it's sticking to me quite a bit still. So I'm going to put 1/4 cup more flour and let that mix it longer. Here again, I just washed my hands. I touched the dough. It doesn't stick to my finger quite as bad. So this looks like we can do maybe 1/8 cup of flour and try one more time. Okay, now feels good. It's not sticking to me quite so bad. You see that? Now we're ready to put it in the mixing or the proofing bowl. So this is my proofing bowl. What I'm gonna do, oh, I can see my reflection. So I'm gonna spray it with some nonstick vegetable oil spray, and then we're gonna let it proof. Into my great big bowl. The recipe says 4.5 cups of flour, and I add 4, and then I just add it in increments after to get the right consistency. I ended up adding 4 3/4 cups of flour to get the right consistency today. Now we're gonna bread proof it. I'm gonna show you how to do that. If you don't have a bread proofing setting on your oven, you can just put it in a warm oven that's off with a bowl of water underneath it. The bowl of water really helps get the yeast to activate and rise, and it helps the dough be softer. I have a bread proof setting, so I'm gonna put that in there on the bottom. I'm gonna hit lower oven, bread proof, and start. And that temperature for bread proofing is about 100 degrees. So what you can do at home is heat your oven up to 200 before you start, turn it off, and then you'll be able to get a warm oven to let it proof in. We want to let it proof for 45 minutes, so I'm going to set my timer for 45. Okay, so while your bread is proofing in the oven, mine's about halfway done, so I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Washed all my dishes and prepped for the next step. After 20 minutes, wash the dishes, prepping for the next step. And there's Carrington. While that is rising in the oven, I've got some more butter flavored Crisco just melting on the stove because I'm going to brush that on the dough when I roll it out. Also, while it's proofing, I get the cinnamon mixture ready for the inside. I'll show you how we brush on the butter substitute, and then we sprinkle this on top of the butter substitute before we roll up the dough. So what I've got here is I've got 2 cups of brown sugar. Just going to put it in my bowl. It's packed. I've got 1 cup of cinnamon in there too. Let's see, this is the cinnamon I use. It's all the same. And then we have ground nutmeg. It says to use a tablespoon, but I'm just gonna eye it. I'm gonna put that nutmeg in there. And now I'm gonna mix it with a fork till it is one uniform mixture. I'm just folding that cinnamon in to the brown sugar and the nutmeg. That's what it looks like once you get it all mixed up together, and it smells amazing. It's been 45 minutes and the dough has risen, so now we're gonna do the next step. So here's my dough. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some cookie sheets and we're gonna divide the dough into 4 pieces, and so we need 4 cookie sheets before we put the dough on the cookie sheet. However, we need to spray it with that vegetable spray again. We need to do that with all 4. What I do as I'm dividing the dough is I spray my hands with the cooking oil and rub my hands together so my hands don't stick to it. I'm gonna pull the dough out. This is 1/4 of the bowl. I'm gonna put it on that cookie sheet. I'm gonna do the same for all the other cookie sheets. Okay, so here's the next step. I don't use a rolling pin because the sides of the cookie sheet stop it and it doesn't go flat enough. So I use this little tiny plastic cup that I have. And I'm gonna roll out all of the dough flat on each cookie sheet. And then I'm gonna brush it with the melted butter flavored Crisco that I have on the stove. I'm gonna make sure and kind of get it all uniformly rolled out. The thinner you roll out the dough, the smaller your layers in your cinnamon roll. And I like to make a lot of cinnamon rolls, so I roll my dough out to cover most of the cookie sheet. So it will look like that when it's rolled out. Okay, next step, melted butter, and I have this brush. If you don't have a brush, you can use the back side of a big spoon, but I'm just gonna dip it in the butter and go all over these. I'm gonna pour some in the middle, just to get a lot. We wanna put a lot of that melted butter flavored Crisco on here, because this is what our cinnamon sugar mixture is gonna stick to. And it's just beautiful. It's so delicious. And this would be like 1 extra Crisco brick. So you'll need 2 bricks of butter flavored Crisco for this recipe. 1 in the dough mixture and 1 to slather on the rolls themselves, like I'm doing right now. It smells really good in my house. Bryant wants to make sure everybody's aware of the giant elk. It's impressive. Okay, so I did all of the pans and I have some left over, and I'm going to put that across the top of the rolls before I let them rise in the oven again. The next step is the cinnamon and sugar. So I get my cinnamon sugar bowl. I'm going to start back here so you can see a little better. Okay, so I've got my big spoon, and I'm going to do the cinnamon sugar mixture now. So I'm just going to spread it all over these babies. And if there is any left over, after I put the butter mixture on the rolls again, after they're cinnamon rolls, sprinkle a little bit more of this across the top, because who doesn't want more cinnamon and sugar, right? It's delicious. And it smells amazing. That nutmeg is the key to making it just delicious and like store bakery quality. You want to go all the way out to the edges. You can leave just a little bit of the edge, not cinnamon sugared, because you got to roll it up. And now the next step is to roll them into the cinnamon rolls and then cut the cinnamon rolls. Okay, here's the next step. We're going to use a pizza cutter, so have it ready. I have a 5th cookie sheet that's been greased, because this is where we're going to put our rolls, because these are all full. So the first thing we do is we're going to roll this up. Again, my hands are clean, and I sprayed them with vegetable spray again, vegetable cooking oil spray, so the dough doesn't stick to me. So I'm making a big roll like this. And then once I get it all rolled, I'm going to pick it up and go to the side. And you might spill a little bit. It's a little messy, but that's okay, because it's all good. It's all for the goodness sake of it. Okay. So now we have our tube of dough. And this is what it's talking about in the recipe when it says roll it into a tube of dough, is this. So the pizza cutter is right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna push and we're gonna cut like this, kind of smashes it. And then we're gonna open up our roll, make it look like a roll again. And then I'm gonna put it on my empty cookie sheet back over here, like that. So I'm gonna keep going until we get this roll done. And then I'll repeat for all of the other ones. And quick movements will help cut through the dough. And if you want a lot of cinnamon rolls, cut them thin. If you don't want as many, cut them thick and then reshape them as you place them onto the tray. I make them probably about 1.5 inches thick when I cut them, just so I have more rolls because my kids like to eat them. And they want as many as possible. Also, you can see I rolled my dough out really thin, and there's thin layers of dough here. If you don't roll your dough out as thin, they'll be thicker and you'll have bigger rolls. You know, some people want giant cinnamon rolls, some people want a lot of little ones, so it just depends on how you roll out the dough and how you choose to cut them. So typically when I make this recipe, it makes me about 60 cinnamon rolls for the size that I like to do for my house. And that lasts us a weekend, maybe a little bit more if I hide them in the freezer. Once you bake these, you can freeze them and eat them later, and they are a great treat to just have sitting on hand. Okay, so I did the whole tube. I have 1 roll left, but there's already 12 on my tray. So I'm going to use this roll to start this tray to go for the next batch. And then these have to proof in the oven again on the bread proof setting for 30 minutes. Again, if you don't have that bread proof setting, just put them in the oven and close the door, don't turn it on. And at the beginning of everything, if you want to heat up your oven to 200 degrees, turn it off and then close the door of the oven. It will stay at a nice warm temperature to help you rise the dough. In Wyoming, my kitchen is cold, so I can't do it out here. They don't rise very well. Comes pan number 2, just to show you one more time about rolling up the dough. It'll go out over the edges of your pan. Don't worry about it. Just keep tucking and rolling. Start cutting again. This one is going to be a giant one, just because the ends are really thick, and my son likes to take the giant rolls for himself. The first pan I did is already warming in the oven. So a lot of people are afraid to make bread at home or rolls at home, but if you're gonna be home, it does take time. Don't leave home. I've done that before making rolls, and I've let them rise too long and it's ruined them. But you are able to do stuff in the in-between time. You're waiting for things to rise, and then your house smells amazing when you're done. When it hits top. Okay, here we go. We've got 4 trays of cinnamon rolls. We've got the 3 on the bottom and 1 on the top, and they're all proofing. I just want to let you know that I am not a professional baker. My cinnamon rolls do not all look exactly the same, but they taste great. I'm not so much caring about how uniform they are. It just depends on how good they are. Okay, so here we go. First one's out of the oven. They look nice like that. Got the little excited one right there. So I'm gonna put them over here to cool. Then I'm gonna let you in on my biggest secret of all. I do not make frosting, I buy this. It works just as well, and it saves me a step. And it's also dairy-free, even though it says cream cheese. There is no dairy in it. So you still have a dairy-free cinnamon roll for all your friends that can't have milk. Leftover melted butter flavored Crisco. Now I'm just spreading that out on top of these really hot, fresh out of the oven cinnamon rolls. These in my oven baked for 13 minutes before I pull them out. And the recipe says 13 to 15 minutes. So the last 2 pans are out of the oven, right here, and we're gonna frost them. Because they've cooled off. I have made homemade frosting in the past. I've just never made it as good as this one tastes for cinnamon rolls. So this saves me some dishes, some time. Leftover cinnamon and nutmeg and sugar mixture. We just sprinkle that over the top of these to finish them off. Voila! Yummy, yummy cinnamon rolls.